You left corporate to build something different, something that felt like yours, like you had control. And somewhere along the way, the thing that you built started to feel like a little too much like the thing you left. And today I want to talk about why that happens and what actually changes it. Hey, and welcome to the podcast with Brooke. Everything I do is built around helping women whose businesses are working but costing them everything to run. I help you get your back end systems into a state that makes sense. So let's dig into it. I want to start with a story from my own business because I think that's probably going to sound really familiar to you. When I left corporate, I started building my own thing and I was really excited about it. I finally had the freedom that I'd been craving. The schedule was mine. I could get up and go throw a little laundry in, or I could spend some time with my husband or my kid or whatever. And it was really amazing. And I loved it. All the decisions were mine. And then also, I was doing work that I actually cared about. And then I started to fill my calendar. At that point in time, I was charging hourly. And the way that I understood business at that point was that in order to make real income, I needed to fill up my work week. And that meant 40 hours a week. That was the blueprint that I had been given my entire working life, right? So why not? 40 hours, equals a real job, quote unquote. 40 hours equals legitimacy, quote unquote. So I started stacking my clients and trying to get to 30 hours and then 40 hours of billable hours a week. And somewhere around 25 or 30 hours, I was already starting to feel it. It was the wrong kind of busy, the kind where when you look up and realize that the life that you're trying to build, the balance, the flexibility, the ability to work on your own terms and not having to have specific hours, that was going away. It was getting further away, and it wasn't what I was dreaming of when I left my job. Because I left corporate because I didn't want that. But when I left, I brought that blueprint with me. At that point, I was working as a virtual assistant and I was trading time very specifically for money. I was still measuring my success by how full my calendar was. I was still operating like the goal was to work as many hours as possible instead of building something that worked without requiring all of me all the time. And that's the moment I wanted to share with you today. And I wanted to name today because I think that it's happening for a lot of businesses right now. And I don't think most people can see from the inside that that's what's happening. So here's what the corporate blueprint looks like when it shows up in an online business. You're measuring your success by how busy you are. A full calendar feels like proof that things are working. An open afternoon feels like, oh no, I'm not making enough money. Something's wrong. You make yourself available all of the time because that's what you were trained to do in corporate. You were trained to be present, to be responsive, to be there, to always be available. And you're also doing everything yourself because you started your own business, right? That's what you're supposed to do. It's supposed to be all on your own and you'll figure it out and all of those things. But you've built your entire income around your own time and your own presence. And that means the minute you take a minute to stop or take a break or you want to go on vacation or just breathe, everything stops, income stops. And so slowly and quietly behind the scenes, the business that was supposed to give you the freedom to start doing the things that you wanted to do, to live the life you wanted to live, it starts to feel like that thing that you actually left behind because you're not actually doing it on your terms. You're doing it the only way you've probably ever been taught to do it. But this way, your schedule belongs to your clients instead of your employer, and it still belongs to someone else. The work that you're doing requires constant presence the same way that an office job did. And that mental load follows you into your home life like it did before. The difference is now you're living at home all the time. So you've got the mental stress of like existing within the home and knowing things need to be getting done here. And you thought maybe you'd have some time to do that, to spend time with your family, to do things around the house, to actually get to a project you've always wanted to do, create something, etc. And so that pressure exists as well as being present in your business all of the time. And that freedom that you're building toward keeps getting pushed away to someday. I'll do it someday when things slow down, when I have more time, when I finally get ahead of it all. But that someday is not going to come with that blueprint because the thing that you're building isn't designed to get you there. For me, that shift started when I stopped asking, how do I fill my calendar? And I started asking, what kind of life do I actually want to build? And what does my business need to look like in order to support that? And that sounds really simple, but it's actually a complete reversal of how most of us have been taught to think about work. And even when you sit down to do it, it feels backwards. It doesn't feel like you should be able to say, well, I don't want to start my day till 10 o'clock. You totally can. You can totally start your day at 10 o'clock if that's what you really want, if that's what works for you and your business, right? What you really need to do is start, instead of starting with the work and fitting your life around it, you have to start with life and design the work to fit inside of that. So I sat down. I said, what do I actually want my work week to look like? And I knew it wasn't going to be the 40-hour version, the version that felt like the reason I started this in the first place needed to go. And it's not that I wasn't willing to work. It's not that I didn't. It's not that I don't sometimes put 40 hours a week in or more because it's my own business. And sometimes I do. But I wanted to have the option. I wanted to design this life that I really had envisioned for myself. Right. And after you start thinking about what you want your work day to look like, your work week to look like, then start asking different questions about your business. Like, what am I going to do that is actually requiring me to be very present? Like my voice, my expertise, the relationships I'm building. What requires presence? Because those are the things that are, very much going to need to be like, I am here, right? And then what am I doing that doesn't require me, but I'm doing it anyway because I never stopped to ask whether it really had to be me? Those things got to be candidates for automation or elimination or delegation. And then I started asking, what can technology do for me? Are there things that I'm manually doing myself that I could be automating with technology? And when I started to look at my business through those questions, lots of things shifted for me. It wasn't an overnight thing, but it was definitely steadily. And I stopped trying to fill those 40 hours and I started to design for the hours that actually needed me. I restructured my offers so I was not selling every single hour of my week. I looked at my back end and started asking questions that were creating unnecessary work for me. Where was that coming from? I started automating things that could be automated. I started documenting things that could be eventually handed off. And slowly, everything started to feel really different. It wasn't necessarily like a huge, like lighter sense of workload, but it was lighter in the way that it felt more aligned and more sustainable and more like the thing I had originally imagined when I decided to do something on my own. The reason your business feels like the thing you left is not because you're not working hard enough or you're not thinking big enough or you're not believing in yourself enough. It's because you're building something new, but with an old set of ideas, an old blueprint, something that corporate left you with. And that is just, it's this idea that work is measured in hours and success means full schedule or nothing. And availability in mass equals professionalism. Doing it yourself equals control. But a business that's designed to give you real freedom is something completely different from that. This business says your time and your energy are your most valuable resources, not the most available resources. It says that your back end of your business should be doing more work so that you don't have to do it all up front. And it says that your goal isn't to be busy, it's to be sustainable. And sustainable is going to look different for everybody, but it almost always involves getting very honest about what requires you to be present and what doesn't, about what your technology should be handling for you and what your systems should be holding. And it's about being able to recognize when the work you're doing has grown to a point where bringing in help is not just a luxury, but a legitimate business decision. That is the shift from the corporate blueprint to something that's actually designed for you and the life you're trying to build. It gets to feel different. Your Tuesdays get to feel different because what you're doing on Tuesday is the work that requires you, the work that you were built to do inside of this business. Not administrative overhead, not the manual tasks, not the bridging, the managing, the compensating for the back end stuff that was never built to hold you. No, your Tuesday gets to feel different. I'll never forget one of the first days when I just decided to be like, I'm not working today. I'm not. knew that I could work this with my clients where I could get the work done the next day, or I had worked a little extra the day before. And I was like, I'm just taking the day off and I'm going on a date with my husband, a breakfast date. And I remember the first time I did that and what an incredible difference that made in how I started to look at my business. Because Tuesday gets to feel different, Wednesday gets to feel different, every single day gets to feel different. And it's not necessarily because you're doing less work or you're not doing, you don't have a sustainable and full calendar. It's because you've designed that calendar to work for you. It's because you built your business in a way that is working for you and you're not working for it. Your launches can feel like milestones and not survival stories. You shouldn't need a week-long nap after a launch. And your clients, they're still going to feel like they're getting the consistent experience from you because you designed a system that gets to hold all of this instead of just you, the whole system. Your mental load is going to have room to breathe because the things that used to live in your head are now functioning well within this system. And that freedom that you were trying to build, that thing you were working for, the thing you're running towards, the one that kept kind of getting pushed away to the someday, that starts to show up in the actual texture of your day. That's what becomes possible when you stop building on the corporate blueprint and you start building something that was actually designed for the life you want. It's not magic, my friend, but it can be real and it is available to you. If you're listening to this and recognizing your own business and what I just described, I want you to know something. You didn't do it wrong. You just built it in the best way that you knew how. The blueprints we've been handed our whole lives. But I'm here to tell you that you do get to build this differently now. There is work now in figuring out what that looks like for your specific business, what needs to change, what needs to be automated, what can be handed off if possible, what needs to be restructured. So the whole thing starts working for you instead of the other way around. That is what I help with. If you want to connect and talk about that and what that could look like for us, you can find me on Instagram or you can send me a message through the link in the show notes.